Thank you very much, Speaker. You know, back when I was in official opposition prior to 2018, I was a critic for community safety. And back then, I took my role very seriously, as I do now, as public safety has always been a major concern of mine. That is why I'm introducing this motion to the legislature with the hopes that it passes and that meaningful results will come forward from the working groups that are anticipated to be formed. Now, before I begin, I would like to recognize a few of the major driving forces that have led me to the introduction of this motion. Lee Montgomery, from my area of Chatham-Kent, Dr. Magda Havas, and Mr. Frank Clegg. They are experts in this field. Lee Montgomery is a former award-winning dairy farmer who lives just north of my riding of Chatham-Kent-Leamington. He has been relentless in his pursuit of resolving this issue for over 35 years. Lee lost his entire dairy herd due to ground current pollution, and sadly, he lost the love of his life, his wife, Donna. To this day, he believes her death can be attributed to the same problem that killed his prized dairy cattle. Dr. Magda Havas is a world-recognized expert on the topic of EMF radiation and ground current stray voltage. She does research on the biological effects of electromagnetic pollution and on the beneficial effects of electrotherapies. She's provided expert testimony in Canada, the U.S., the UK, South Africa, and the Philippines on the health effects of power lines, occupational magnetic field exposure, and, of course, radio frequency radiation. I also want to recognize Mr. Frank Clegg. Frank has spent 40 years in the technology industry and most recently was the president of Microsoft Canada. After extensive research and discussions with experts from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, McGill, and University of Toronto, he co-founded Canadians for Safe Technology in 2012. Mr. Speaker, I am recommending that an established working group consist of independent experts, one or two farmers who have experienced ground current problems, independent contractors, utility employees who are in a position to do testing and remediation, as well as those who have greater authority in decision-making. The purpose of this working group would be to learn how to monitor ground current based on the most recent scientific research and to teach others how to properly conduct ground current testing, learn which equipment to use, how to discover sources of ground current, and how to remediate or fix the problem, including sanctioning workshops on how to conduct ground current monitoring. You might ask, why am I bringing this motion forward? Well, I believe it is important to protect the health and livelihoods of those, especially in our farming communities throughout Ontario. Ground current causes livestock to experience health issues such as mastitis, foot rot, open sores that won't heal even with antibiotics, sudden death, and even miscarriages. This results in a huge financial loss to our farmers. In the past, some of the supporting organizations include the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, Dairy Farmers of Ontario, Beef Farmers of Ontario, Ontario Holsteins, the City of Kawartha Lakes, Christian Farmers Federation of Ontario, and even the County of Dufferin that, by the way, represents 8 municipalities. Now, of note, there is scientific evidence that the wrong metrics are being used to determine if there is stray current problems on farms. That is why I believe a panel of experts are needed to develop a consistent manner in which to measure ground current and develop solid best practices to be taught to others. The current practices need to be improved upon. After all, Thomas Edison, the father of electricity, did studies back in the 1800s that mandated return currents be returned on the wire and never through the ground because of the negative impact on living creatures. I'm sure that if he were alive today, Mr. Edison would have said, when you mess up, you fess up, and then you fix it. And in my opinion, the party making that error must have, in fact, fixed it at their expense. It's my argument of Edison's statement. I would like to present the current situation right here in rural Ontario. This is where the topic of ground current or stray voltage come in. Our power infrastructure works by taking power to the customers but also allowing the excess electricity to return to the source or dissipate it back to the earth. This is known as grounding. For big hydro towers, a grounding wire can be run all the way back to the power plant, but this costs a lot of money. So the power companies use a simpler method by having a wire connect straight to the earth, which in most cases happens every few towers. This is not good. Now, when I say towers, I also can attribute it to the power poles out in rural Ontario, where you may see, after so many different power poles, a line running down the pole, protected, but it's then attached to a grounding rod, and that live wire connects to the grounding rod, and that dissipates throughout the ground. A beef farmer in my riding once told me that he lives in fear of the unknown, ground current pollution. You can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't smell it, but animals and humans sense it. This motion, if passed, and all the studies and teachings are done, farmers in our province need legislative support to act as a means of health and safety enforcement. So let me define what ground current is, for those of you who may not be aware of what it is. According to the OFA, the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, stray current or uncontrolled electricity is a constant underground current that runs through the soil and is detectable on barn floors or through metal feeders or stabilizing structures. It is electricity that delivers unwanted electrical currents that can cause serious harm to livestock. A common phrase heard in reference to electrical safety goes something like this: it's not the voltage that kills, it's the current. You see, the principle that current kills is essentially correct. It is the electric current that burns tissue, freezes muscles, and fibrillates hearts. However, electric current doesn't just occur on its own. There must be voltage available to motivate the current to flow through a victim. Where there are examples of high current can kill quickly, exposures to low current levels of current flowing along the ground have the same effect, but much more slowly. Cattle on farms have been dying from the effects of stray current and voltage for at least the past 40 years, probably more. Indeed, thousands of cattle have been adversely affected. Dairy cows are extremely sensitive to electricity. Generally, they will start to notice currents flowing through their bodies and subsequently produce less milk each day, as well as suffer additional health problems such as mastitis, an infection of the udders. At higher levels, they die. In some of these cases, dairy farmers sell off the remaining cows and start planting crops on the land. One of them, based near Woodstock, claims he's lost more than 100 cows and over $1 million due to utility-based stray voltage issues that have been confirmed by electrical engineers. In a recent investigation, farmers spent more than $100,000 to hire 5 different electricians over 4 years to solve his stray voltage problems. He found that his cows were reluctant to drink at watering troughs or enter automated milking machines. His milk production was reduced by 40%. You see, when a cow goes to get a drink and they get a tingle, they don't like that. The body tells them that there's something wrong. And in our bodies, if something is wrong, we're not feeling well, perhaps we find ourselves, our blood count, our white blood cell count increases. And as a result, that does in fact affect the milk production of cows. Utilities should examine electrical distribution designs. Sask Power appears to be the first in Canada to require a 4-wire drop for new residential and agricultural customers, which is a step in the right direction. Further, Sask Power recommends the installation of a bond wire between agricultural buildings to establish an equipotential plane with the neutral bonded only to the ground at the transformer or weatherhead to prevent the ground or bond wire from carrying any current. In California, meanwhile, special electrical utility high voltage systems designed for farming areas have yielded what we call the happy cow designation. Recommendations for fixing such problems will cost money, raising issues of politics, shareholder returns, and legal liability. but what is the cost to society when farms are shut down? So again, I look at it and I go, oh, look, let me summarize something right here, right now. You know, do we have a problem with ground current? Yeah, the question to that, or the answer to that is absolutely yes. Some of those reasons include power quality is deteriorating, the load is increasing, antiquated utility infrastructure needs upgrading, as well, utility practice, the primary neutrals with multiple connections are attached to the ground. So what are the consequences then of objectionable ground current effects? As mentioned previously, dairy cattle experience lower milk production, milk quality issues, mastitis, swollen joints, foot rot, reproductive problems, and behavior. You know, we call that dancing cows. I've seen it. I've been on farms. I've attested to, and can attest to, you know, the testing that has taken place on these farms. And when all of a sudden they increase the current flow as a test, you can see the cows. The current goes up maybe a hindquarter through their body and down. And they try to break that, and we call that the dancing cow syndrome. You know, people also experience electrosensitivity, reproductive problems, depression, stress, and even cancer. And for many farmers, they experience huge financial hardships, with some leading to bankruptcy. Speaker, in a way to honor my friend, Mr. Lee Montgomery, I hereby do declare unofficially, I want to call this private member's motion the Lee Montgomery Motion. I will have more to say, you know, with regards to stray current in just a few moments, but I will now turn the floor over to those who also want to participate in this debate on stray current. Thank you very much, Speaker. Thank you very much, Speaker. I know I'll have 2 more minutes, but I have just a few quick seconds. I want to, again, reiterate the fact that if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And the purpose of these working teams, these working groups, is to, in fact, allow, you know, new eyes, fresh eyes to look at how we can, in fact, correctly, more accurately measure ground current pollution, which will, in fact, save a lot of farmers from financial stress and distress, as well as their livestock. It affects not just dairy cattle, but also affects beef cattle and other 4-legged animals, and even 2-legged animals. I visited a chicken farm back in the Chatham area several years ago, because in fact I introduced my bill back in 2016, and it passed second reading, but the government of the day, the Liberals, refused to bring this bill into committee where it could be further examined. But what I would like to do, though, Speaker, is to thank the member from Danforth, the member from Oakville, the member, again, from Algoma, Manitoulin, and, of course, the member from Whitby for their contribution to the debate today. Again, knowing what we know, and I'm working closely with the Ministry of Energy, I brought this motion forward to create working groups in accordance to the Ministry of Energy and local distribution companies to clearly pinpoint the hotspots and solve the problem of stray current and stray voltage and ground currents. See, I was part of a team, part of a group many years ago back in opposition, and at the party of the day, well, not the party of the day, that would be the Liberals, but the Hydro One created what they call rapid response teams. But nothing really developed out of that. So we need to take this step even further. So again, Speaker, I want to thank everyone for the opportunity of bringing this motion forward. We don't know the long-term effects, but from what I've seen so far, it can't be good. And I'm happy and thankful for all of those who have worked with me to help bring this situation to light. Listen, there are solutions out there. Let's find them. Let's make what we're doing now even better. Thank you so much, Speaker, for the time to present my motion to the Ontario Legislature. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Time provided for private members' public business has expired. Mr. Nicholls has moved private members' notice of motion number 158. Is it the pleasure of the House that the motion carry? Carried. And that is carried.